What do you think a hero is? Is it someone who wears a mask and flies around the city, stopping the bad guy and putting out fires with a single breath? These people are heroes, but I think the word means so much more. Sometimes they're just ordinary people, like you or me. I think those are the best kind. They don't have super strength, but they still do what they believe to be right. Today, I'm here to talk about my hero. During the Holocaust, there were many people who worked to save those being persecuted by the Nazis, risking everything to help them. If they were caught, and some were, they were either killed or incarcerated in prisons and concentration camps. After the war, some of these people who helped the Jews, despite not being Jewish themselves, were put in a list called the Righteous Among the Nations to honor their work. One of these people was a Czechoslovakian Catholic woman named Karla Endelova. She had many refugees in her home and managed to keep them hidden for about a year and a half. During that time, she had a Jewish widower called Ferdinand Weiss. Both of his sisters and all three of his children had been sent to Auschwitz. Although he did not yet know that none of his children would come home, he and Karla started an anti-Nazi group. At some point, the two began to fall in love. However, luck was not in their favor. Karla had a friend who was jealous of her affections for Ferdinand. So, to get him out of the way, this so-called friend turned in the house to the Nazis. In March of 1940, they came and took everyone away, including Karla. The Nazis interrogated her for information and even tortured her when she wouldn't talk, to the point that her hip was dislocated. Despite this, she refused to give in. Her hip never healed properly, leaving her with one shorter leg. However, she took pride in this fact, and in later years she called it her trophy. Eventually, she was sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp, where she was held as a political prisoner until it was liberated in April of 1945 by the Soviet Army. Although it is a lesser-known camp, Ravensbrück was actually the second largest women's camp next to Auschwitz-Birkenau. Located north of Berlin, construction began in late 1938. Between 1938 and 1945, around 130,000 female prisoners passed through the camp system. Only somewhere between 15,000 and 32,000 of that total survived. It seems strange to think about, but during the first year or so, camp living conditions were acceptable. There were relatively clean clothes and bedding, enough food to get by, and even a washroom. But as time went on, the sanitation got worse. In 1942, the medical experiments began on the prisoners. There was also forced labor, and the food rations were always decreasing. Those who couldn't work were sent to the gas chambers. However, the women never lost their fighting spirit. Fighting back directly, though, would have been suicide. So they found other ways. Some of the women were forced to work in factories making textiles and electronics. One of the things they had to make was socks for the soldiers. But they made adjustments secretly on the machines to make the fabric thin at the heel and toe so they were easily broken when the Germans marched. This resulted in some pretty sore feet among the men wearing them. They also made things for themselves, like jewelry and small books, items that could be easily hidden. Later, they said that these things made them feel like they were still human. One unknown woman wrote a poem describing the struggle to stay strong in the camp. We must keep our heads high. Nothing is able to break us down. As long as we can, we want to bend our backs to the hardness and pain and wait for our lives that wait for us outside. When the camp was freed, the guards were put on trial. 16 of those accused were found guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity and were sentenced to death. Until this point, Karla vanished from the records. Most of Ravensbrück's files were destroyed by the fleeing Germans in hope that, with lack of evidence, they wouldn't get convicted. But she reappears in 1945 in pictures of her wedding to Ferdinand Weiss, the Jewish man she had hidden and fallen in love with all those years before. In 1969, she moved to America for a fresh start, and in 1978, she was listed among the righteous among the nations under the name Andelka Karla Andelova. Andelka means angel, and it was the nickname given to her by the other women of Ravensbrück. In 1984, Karla died at the age of 76. But her memory has not died. As I have learned her story, she has grown from a name on a piece of paper, or just some face in an old picture, into a real, live person. Despite the odds, she made a difference. And in doing so, she has inspired me to be a better person and to make a difference where I can. She was a true hero. I am proud to call her my great-grandmother.